Hey, I'm Matt and welcome back to Soil Lab. We're not going to dive into any data or demos or anything like that today, but instead we're going to do a follow-up lawn tour with Chris Borgman of MySoil and really just look at his lawn strategy. This year's been an exceptionally challenging year here in the Intermountain West with over 2 weeks of 100-degree weather, and we want to know how Chris keeps his lawn looking like this so that you can do the same. Chris, can you just start us off, maybe take us just through the life cycle of a season, starting with the seed, what species and cultivars, varieties, or what do you have planted out here?
Here we have a blend of Kentucky bluegrass and perennial ryegrass. This is a seed blend that we've had made specifically for us here at MySoil. It's a really unique blend in the fact that with the perennial ryegrass, you get the early establishment, in the first couple weeks, and then the Kentucky bluegrass will actually come in underneath and really start to fill in. And wherever you have damage in the lawn, the Kentucky blue will fill in those areas. So it's a nice blend of turf here in the Pacific Northwest. As far as this lawn here, I don't know if you can see on the camera where it is right now, but one portion of this lawn was actually planted one year prior to this half of the lawn. And you can really see the side that has the more ryegrass showing versus where the Kentucky bluegrass has started to really fill in underneath. So you still see a dark green on this side, but you see a much darker green as the bluegrass is filled in the past 2 years on the older portion of the lawn.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys might remember almost a couple years ago, we did a lawn walkthrough video with Chris during the establishment year of the turf that was over here. And where we're standing now was actually killed out in the background of that video. So if you want to check that video out, you can kind of compare and contrast where we've come since then. Now, Chris, one of the things that I want to pay really close attention to is we had 2 weeks of 100+ degree weather here in the valley, which is the hottest summer on record since 2015. How'd you keep your lawn in this condition if battling that heat that we're not accustomed to here in Southeast Washington?
Yeah, so it was a very tough year, and even tougher in the fact that we actually had a fire at our house just over a year ago. So I actually haven't lived at this property for just over a year now. Obviously, I still come and take care of the lawn, but not being on site and having the hottest year, really on record for July and August, it's been definitely a challenge. And I guess my strategy always starts in the spring, with obviously soil testing and setting my fertility program for the season. And I truly believe that having that foundation with good seed genetics is what allows the lawn, to do the best that it can in those specific scenarios. And so this summer, I mowed at 1.5 inches throughout the whole summer. I make sure my irrigation is really dialed in, and most of that came from when we did the grow in of this specific area here. That gives us the perfect time when there's bare soil to come in and dial in the irrigation nozzles, make sure your coverage is perfect. So coming out of that, there's a lot of advantages to having the irrigation dialed in. Even with the irrigation dialed in, fertility, those type of temperatures for that long really take a toll. And what I saw mostly was that the ryegrass started to struggle a little bit, but the Kentucky bluegrass held in there and really filled in those areas where the ryegrass may have faded out a little bit. So if you have like a mono stand of, just one turf or the other, say if I would have just had ryegrass, the lawn would have looked a lot rougher, I believe, this season. Most of the time you could have a straight ryegrass lawn in the Pacific Northwest, but this season it really would have showed the effects of not having that bluegrass in there to fill in underneath.
Gotcha. So basically you're starting with good seed genetics. We're soil testing once in the spring just to kind of guide the direction of the fertility program, and you're dialing in your irrigation. And you said you took advantage of that during establishment. You're not on site. What kind of controllers are you using so that you can monitor your irrigation?
Yeah, I do run a Wi-Fi controller for my irrigation system here, so that allows me to make adjustments when I'm not here, but you still have to have your feet on the ground, to do it right. So just because I can change it, when I'm not here, doesn't offset the fact that you need to be on the property, you need to be walking in, looking at things, also probing the ground, checking for dry spots or where you are on your moisture with a soil probe or profile puller, and just see where you are on your irrigation strategy and how that's looking.
Sure. So if I'm a subscriber or viewer right now and I'm looking at this, I'm wondering, well, one, how many times a week do you have to mow this thing? Two, what's your mowing height currently, and has that changed for any reason?
So typically I mow every 3 days is my strategy, and that's just to eliminate the amount of top growth that I have, the amount of clippings I'm removing. I do remove clippings on this property. My mower is a bagger, and the main reason I've done that is I really don't like clippings everywhere. Again, the kids will track those into the house. Now, even though I haven't been here this year, I still have the same mower. So same philosophy. So I do like to bag clippings, and I do like to use those around the property, on the perimeter, and in the garden area. Typically I mow at 1.5 inches. I have bumped it up to just over 2 inches, about 2.25 inches is where I'm sitting at right now. The reason I did that is the summer was just tough. When I went and probed and looked at the profile, I was seeing a lack of roots in the surface from just the heat and the temperatures and the moisture and humidity that we had in the upper part of the rooting zone. So I'm just now seeing new roots forming, which tells me that we lost a lot of roots during the summer. And so my goal right now is to get the lawn to recover going into fall. And now I'm not that far off of that, but just taking a little bit different steps there in that direction on the recovery side.
Sure. So how much herbicide have you put out this year? How much fungicide have you put out this year? And then we'll jump into maybe some cultural practices after that.
Yeah, herbicide wise, I haven't done pre-emergent on this lawn for crabgrass or foxtail or any grassy weeds in 2 years since establishment. Okay. So no pre-emergence. And then for broadleaf control, I just spot sprayed about a week ago on some areas in the lawn that we can take a look at. But if you have a great turf stand and you manage it well and you have good density, it's really going to eliminate the need for the use of specific herbicides and fungicides. I rarely use fungicides here in the Pacific Northwest. We're usually dry enough to where we don't need to use fungicides. This year, I think there was a little bit of damage from fungus. Again, because of the type of grass with the Kentucky blue, I'm not really worried about those small areas. Those areas will recover over time, so I'll just let those be.
Gotcha. And then outside of mowing and irrigating appropriately and fertilizing appropriately, what other cultural practices are you doing to the lawn?
About 2 weeks ago, I did come through and take a spring tooth thatcher on the front of the mower. And the goal and the purpose of that was to go ahead and just clean out any of that dead debris, the stuff that, that died over the summer, just really clean that out. And make sure that I give room for new healthy turf to come back and fill in. So I like to do that, throughout the season. If the lawn's getting too dense and it looks scalpy when you're mowing, I'll come in with a spring tooth on the front of my mower and I'll really take some of that thatch and that dead debris out and kind of thin the turf out. And that just gives you a lot better look and feel of the grass and just way more healthy appearance.
Nice. And I want to get to how much time you spend on this lawn weekly on a ballpark, but I think we need to just have a good understanding of the scale. Most people watching, myself included, don't have this amount of turf. Do you know about how many total square feet you're managing at this property?
Yeah, I have right at 75,000 square feet. So right around almost 2 acres of lawn that I have to take care of. And so typically it'll take me a good hour and a half to mow everything on a given day. So people think I spend a ton of time in my lawn, but it's literally usually just mowing is the most time I spend in the lawn. As far as, fertility, I fertilize every 5 to 6 weeks and just let that carry out. So besides fertilizing and mowing, I don't spend a ton of extra time. I'll watch the sprinklers, watch the irrigation run. make sure that's, all the heads are turning, things look right. But outside of that, I mean, my goal and strategy is to make it so that everybody can have a lawn. They don't have to spend every waking minute in the lawn. So, our goal at MySoil is really to help guide people in that fashion to where the lawn can look good, but they can also have the time to sit back and enjoy the lawn and not spend every second trying to make it look the best it can.
Absolutely. And I know you've got a busy life with 3 kids. I've got a busy life and a really busy wife too. And so I try to minimize the amount of time in my lawn as well. And so if we were to scale this down, you're saying that we could have results like this on a fully granular fertilizer program for less than 5 hours a week. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I don't have a ton of area to, string trim and edge. I do have some, curbing around landscapes and stuff, but, that can add a little bit of time as well. If you have trees in the fall, you're dealing with a good amount of leaf pickup and that type of thing. But for me, yeah, really just mowing, making sure the fertility is good, where it's controlled growth, and just, that time that it takes to mow every 3 days, I think is really critical in, having a nice lawn.
Absolutely. And we'll go ahead and look at a profile here in a second, but the other thing that Chris has here is just this beautiful silt loam soil as a native. So if you're sitting back home on some Georgia clay or some really, really heavy sand, maybe you skip past this next spot because we're going to look at just some beautiful silt loam. But that's the other thing that you're really fortunate to have is just this beautiful medium textured soil that holds quite a bit of available water and holds on to quite a bit of nutrient as well.
Yeah, it is. Some of it can be more on the alkaline side, like high calcium carbonate soil. So, I mean, there is some issues in the area, but yeah, it can have some challenges in certain areas or certain topographies, on the property. There's some high areas where it's more high pH, more high calcium carbonate type soils that, I need to manage a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. But with my fertility program and using more acidifying fertilizers like ammonium sulfate, those areas have really evened out, over time under the right management strategy. But overall, yeah, we're really blessed to have great silt loam soils here in this area.
Yeah. You heard Chris mention using those acidifying fertilizers. If you think back to the last video, his irrigation water has a pretty high pH, and he doesn't want to be applying a pH amendment like elemental sulfur. So in lieu of that elemental sulfur, he's using, as an example, ammonium sulfate to keep that soil pH in the optimal range. And if I remember right, you're right at 6.8, 6.9. Is that still pretty true today?
Yeah, I sit it right at 6.8, 6.9, which grows phenomenal turf. If you're, close to 7, once you get over 7, you can start to see some nutrient availability issues that can cause some challenges. But I think truly can grow, fine turf up in, 7, a little bit above 7. But I like to just be a little bit, below 7 on my pH.
Sure. So I think what I'd like to do now, if it's all right with you, is I want to grab my soil profiler. We'll take a look at the soil profile down to 5 or 6 inches, look at how deep we're rooted, look at how much thatch there is.
Sure.
Okay.
One of the things that I don't probably do enough is aerify. It's just something because of the type of soils I have, they don't get that hard. It was a little tough to put it in, but not overly hard. So one thing with this much area, I don't aerify as well. I probably could, probably should, but it's just something that I don't do just because of time. And
well, let's see how well aerated we are. If you remember in the last video, we looked at a lot of earthworms when we looked at we had a cup cutter last time, and those earthworms are providing some of that natural aeration for you. Right. And so just focusing on creating that healthy soil with those worms might help you get away with not aerating as often.
Yeah, that's one thing to note is we do have a lot of earthworms in this particular soil, so that gives us kind of our natural aeration component.
Yeah, so you can see this is that beautiful silt loam we talked about. We have very little, if any, thatch accumulation. And for those of you getting ready to Google thatch, how would you describe thatch, Chris?
It's just that area between the healthy turf and the soil where you can get buildup of dead and decaying organic debris, in this area here. So There's a little bit that we're seeing here, but I wouldn't call that, you know, too much thatch. That's just, you know, a lot of rooting in that higher portion of the soil profile.
Absolutely, and something I'm noticing is we don't have really dense roots coming out of the bottom of this right now, but we do have roots all the way to depth, and that's probably, you know, like I said, 5 or 6 inches deep. So good and moist, but not overly wet, driving that rooting down, which really is surprising, you know, coming into the end of the summer like we are with the heat that we've had.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot less roots coming out of this summer than typical. I'm obviously seeing some roots here, you know, coming out of the bottom of the soil here, but these are kind of our big feeder roots, it looks like. I know up in the upper part of the profile, I'm seeing some really new roots coming out from the upper part, the crowns of the turf. What that tells me is in this upper maybe, you know, inch of the soil with the temperatures that we had, you know, soil temps reaching maybe almost 90 degrees. We had some damage to some of our upper roots, but we did have, you know, some decent feeder roots, you know, down deep. And so some of these upper roots are still pretty small, but they're starting to regrow and reestablish.
Perfect. All right, Chris, well, thanks again for taking the time to let us invade your space and come and look at your lawn and talk about it. Can you walk me and our viewers through just kind of the bullet pointed list of what you do to get these results?
Yeah, I'd say the key things are really fertility management, selecting the right fertilizer products for your soil conditions, your climate. The second thing would be, you know, irrigation control. If you have irrigation, make sure that your nozzles and your coverage is good going into the hotter months. The third one is really mowing practices or some other cultural practices, which is mowing every 3 to 4 days. Just be consistent in your mowing. And then the last one would really be just, you know, weed control early in the spring if you have grassy weeds, and, you know, during season if you have broadleaf weeds, and making sure those don't, you know, take over the lawn.
Gotcha. So whether you're on 2,000 square feet or 2 acres, you can have these results. Chris just walked us through how to do that. If you appreciated this, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell to get notified when we launch new content, and I look forward to seeing y'all again soon in the lab.